A woman screams somewhere behind shattered champagne flutes and gunfire. Blood pools beneath designer shoes. Emma Vale runs through darkness, knowing the mafia heir who just murdered 3 men in cold blood will hunt her down before sunrise, because she saw everything, and Roman Vescari never leaves witnesses alive. If you want to see how a kidnapped waitress survives inside a criminal empire, stay with me until the end. Hit like and comment what city you're watching from, so I can see how far this story travels. Imprisonment. The gunfire started during the champagne service. Emma Vale held a silver tray balanced against her hip, weaving through a ballroom filled with people who earned more in an afternoon than she made in a year. Crystal chandeliers burned overhead. A string quartet played something classical and forgettable near the stage. Everyone wore diamonds and boredom like they were born to it. Emma wore a black catering uniform that pinched across her shoulders and shoes that hurt after the first hour. She smiled when someone took a glass, nodded when someone ignored her, disappeared into the background the way invisible people learn to do. She was 23 years old, 3 months behind on rent, and exhausted in ways that had nothing to do with the shift. The gunfire shattered all of it. Not one shot, not two. A cascade of violence that tore through the far entrance like something mechanical and unstoppable. People screamed, tables overturned. Emma's tray hit the marble floor with a crash that nobody heard because the entire ballroom had collapsed into chaos. She dropped low, instinct driving her toward the service exit near the kitchen. Other staff members scattered in every direction. A woman in a red gown fell near the stage, clutching her shoulder. Blood spread across white fabric like spilled wine. Emma kept moving. She hit the service hallway at a dead run, shoes skidding against tile. Behind her, more gunfire. Shouting, the kind of noise that meant people were dying and she needed to be anywhere else. The back exit dumped her into a loading alley behind the hotel. Rain hammered down from a sky turned black and ugly. Emma stumbled forward, soaked within seconds, her uniform clinging to her skin. She kicked off the heels because running mattered more than dignity. The alley stretched between industrial buildings, lit only by a single flickering street lamp halfway down. Emma ran barefoot through puddles, her breath tearing out of her chest. She needed distance. She needed a phone. She needed to disappear before whatever happened inside the ballroom followed her outside. She made it 2 blocks before she realized she was heading toward the warehouse district instead of the main streets. Stupid. So stupid. Emma turned down another alley, searching for lights, for traffic, for anything that resembled safety. Instead, she found shadows and rain and the distant hum of the city beyond the industrial maze. Then she heard voices, low, controlled, speaking calmly in a place where nobody had any reason to be calm. Emma pressed herself against a brick wall, chest heaving, water streaming down her face. The voices came from around the corner near a loading dock. She should have run, should have turned back. Instead, she looked. 3 men knelt in the rain beneath a single overhead light. Their hands were bound behind their backs with zip ties. They wore suits that had been expensive before the blood and the water ruined them. Standing above them was a man in black, tall, lean, utterly still in a way that made the violence around him seem louder. Dark hair slicked back from a face carved from stone and cruelty. He held a handgun loosely at his side, the kind of ease that came from holding it 1,000 times before. Roman Vescari. Emma didn't know his name yet, but she recognized power when she saw it. The kind of power that didn't need to shout, that silenced rooms just by existing. He said something too quiet for Emma to hear. One of the kneeling men started begging. The words tumbled out desperate and broken, sentences collapsing into each other. Roman raised the gun. The first shot cracked through the rain like thunder splitting stone. The man crumpled forward, lifeless before he hit the ground. Emma's gasp cut through the noise. Every head turned. 6 armed men materialized from the shadows behind Roman, guns rising toward the alley where Emma stood frozen. Roman's gaze locked onto her with the precision of a predator recognizing prey. Run! The thought finally broke through her terror. Emma bolted. Behind her, footsteps pounded against wet concrete, shouting. Commands barked in voices that expected obedience. She ran harder than she had ever run, her bare feet slipping on rain-slicked pavement, lungs burning, heart slamming against her ribs. She didn't make it 50 feet. Hands grabbed her from behind, yanking her backward with enough force to steal her breath. Emma screamed and fought, clawing at arms wrapped around her waist, kicking blindly. Someone swore. Another voice snapped orders. They dragged her back toward the loading dock. Roman stood exactly where she had left him, calm and untouchable while rain hammered down around him. Up close, he was younger than she expected. Maybe 30, maybe older. Hard to tell when cruelty aged a face in ways time couldn't measure. Emma stopped struggling when she saw the bodies. 3 of them now. Execution style. Blood mixing with rainwater, draining toward the gutter. She was going to die here. Roman studied her with dark eyes that revealed nothing. No anger, no curiosity, just cold assessment, like she was a problem requiring a solution. "Let me go," Emma whispered. Her voice cracked. "Please. I won't say anything. I didn't see." "You saw everything." Roman's voice was quiet, controlled, the kind of voice that didn't need volume to carry authority. "That's the problem." One of the men holding her tightened his grip. "Want me to handle it, boss?" Roman's gaze never left Emma's face. Rain dripped from his hair, tracing lines down his jaw. He looked like something carved from marble and violence, beautiful in the way sharp things are beautiful right before they cut. "No." The single word hung in the rain-soaked air. Roman stepped closer, close enough that Emma could see the flecks of gold buried in his dark irises, close enough that she could smell gunpowder and expensive cologne mixing with rain. "You have 2 choices," he said softly. "Come with me, or die beside them." Emma's legs went weak. "That's not a choice." "No." Roman tilted his head slightly, studying her. "It's not." He turned and walked toward a black SUV idling at the far end of the loading dock. The men holding Emma dragged her after him. She tried to resist, heels digging into the wet concrete, but exhaustion and terror had stripped her of anything resembling strength. They shoved her into the back seat. Roman slid in beside her, close enough that his shoulder pressed against hers. The door slammed shut. The locks engaged with a heavy click that sounded like a cage closing. Emma stared straight ahead, shaking so hard her teeth rattled. The driver pulled away from the loading dock without a word. Rain blurred the windows, turning the city into streaks of light and shadow. Emma didn't know where they were going, didn't know if begging would make it worse or if silence would buy her another few minutes of life. Roman said nothing. He sat perfectly still beside her, one hand resting on his knee, the other holding the gun with the same casual ease, like it was part of him, like violence was just another accessory. Emma forced herself to breathe, in through her nose, out through her mouth, the way she used to do before exams, before job interviews, before every moment in her life that required her to pretend she wasn't falling apart. This was different. This was the kind of fear that lived in your throat and refused to leave. "Where are you taking me?" she finally whispered. Roman glanced at her, just once, brief and dismissive. "Somewhere you won't be found." The words settled over her like a shroud. The SUV climbed steadily upward, away from the warehouse district, away from the city center. Through the rain-streaked windows, Emma watched the buildings thin out, replaced by trees and darkness. The road narrowed, switchbacks carved into a hillside that rose above the glowing city below. 20 minutes later, they passed through iron gates that opened automatically, revealing a long driveway lined with perfectly manicured hedges. At the end of it stood a mansion pulled from some billionaire's fever dream, modern architecture mixed with old-world elegance, all glass and stone and cold beauty. The SUV stopped beneath a covered portico. Roman climbed out first. One of his men opened Emma's door and gestured for her to follow. She stumbled out onto marble tile, barefoot and shaking, her soaked uniform clinging to her like a second skin. Inside, the mansion stretched in every direction. High ceilings, expensive art, furniture that probably cost more than Emma's entire life. Everything pristine and sterile and utterly soulless. Roman led her through hallways lined with closed doors until they reached a bedroom near the back of the estate. He pushed the door open and stepped aside. "You'll stay here." Emma stared into the room. King-sized bed, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, a private bathroom visible through an open door. It looked like a luxury hotel suite. It looked like a prison. "I didn't see anything," Emma tried again, desperation bleeding into her voice. "I don't even know who you are. Just let me go. Please." Roman's expression didn't change. If I let you go, you'll be dead by morning. My enemies don't leave loose ends any more than I do. Then what's the point of keeping me alive? For the first time, something flickered across his face. Not quite emotion, more like the shadow of something buried deep. I haven't decided yet. He stepped back into the hallway. Don't try to leave. The door's locked from the outside. The windows don't open. If you scream, no one will hear you. If you run, my men will bring you back. Emma's throat tightened. So I'm a prisoner. Roman paused in the doorway, his silhouette sharp against the hallway light. You're alive, he said quietly. That's more than the alternative. The door closed with a soft click. The lock engaged. Emma stood alone in the middle of the luxurious prison, dripping rainwater onto expensive carpet, her entire body trembling with adrenaline and terror and exhaustion. She had no phone, no shoes, no way out. Somewhere below, the city glowed like a constellation of false promises. Emma sank onto the edge of the bed and finally let herself cry. Upkijk. The first 3 days blurred together. Meals arrived on silent trays delivered by staff who refused to make eye contact. Breakfast, lunch, dinner, all of it prepared by someone who clearly knew how to cook, but served it like they were feeding a ghost. Emma ate because her body demanded it, even when her mind screamed that she should refuse. Hunger didn't care about dignity. She tested the door 18 times, tried the windows another dozen, searched every drawer, every closet, every corner of the bathroom looking for something she could use as a weapon or a tool. Nothing. Whoever designed this prison knew exactly what they were doing. On the 4th morning, Emma woke to find clean clothes folded on the chair near the window, soft cotton pants, a plain white shirt. Both fit perfectly, which meant someone had guessed her size with disturbing accuracy. She showered for the first time since the gala, scrubbing away 4 days of sweat and fear and dried rain. The hot water felt obscene, luxurious, wrong in every possible way. When she emerged from the bathroom, Roman was sitting in the chair by the window. Emma froze, one hand clutching the towel wrapped around her hair. He looked different in daylight, less like a nightmare and more like a man who hadn't slept in days. Dark circles shadowed his eyes. His jaw carried the shadow of stubble. He wore a black shirt unbuttoned at the collar, sleeves rolled to his elbows, revealing forearms corded with muscle and a single tattoo she couldn't quite make out. You need to eat more, he said without looking at her. His gaze stayed fixed on the city beyond the windows. Emma's pulse hammered. I'm eating fine. You left half your dinner untouched last night. Maybe I wasn't hungry. You're lying. The certainty in his voice made her teeth clench. What do you want? Roman finally turned his head, dark eyes sweeping over her with the same clinical assessment he'd used in the rain-soaked alley. Not lustful, not cruel, just cold and calculating. I want to know if you're going to survive this. Survive what? Being kidnapped? Being held prisoner by a murderer? Something dangerous flickered across his expression. Careful. Or what? Emma stepped forward, anger cutting through the fear. You'll kill me? You were going to do that anyway. If I wanted you dead, you'd be buried beside the others. Roman stood slowly, unfolding from the chair with the fluid grace of something predatory. I don't keep liabilities unless they're useful. Then why am I still here? He moved closer, close enough that Emma could see the faint scar cutting through his left eyebrow. Close enough to smell cedar and smoke clinging to his clothes. Because you're an innocent person caught in a world that destroys innocent things, he said quietly. And I'm trying to decide if keeping you alive makes me weak or strategic. Emma's breath hitched. I'm not a thing. No. Roman's gaze dropped to her mouth, then back to her eyes. You're a complication. He turned and walked toward the door. Wait. Roman paused, one hand on the doorknob. How long are you going to keep me here? He didn't turn around. As long as it takes. For what? Silence stretched between them, heavy and suffocating. For me to figure out what to do with you. The door closed behind him. Emma stood alone in the expensive prison, her pulse racing, her mind spinning with questions that had no answers. Bakken. Days became a week, then 2. Emma stopped counting after 17. The routine became almost bearable. Meals arrived. She ate. She read books pulled from a small shelf near the window. Old novels with cracked spines and yellowed pages that someone had clearly read before. She slept. She stared at the city lights and wondered if anyone was looking for her. Probably not. She'd been living alone since her mother died 2 years ago. No siblings. No close friends who would notice if she disappeared. Just a landlord who would eventually rent her studio apartment to someone else, and a boss who had already replaced her at the catering company. Emma Vale had vanished from the world, and the world hadn't even blinked. Roman visited her regularly, sometimes daily, sometimes not for days. He never explained his absence, never apologized for the intrusion. He would sit in the chair by the window and say nothing for long stretches. Sometimes he brought paperwork and worked in silence while Emma pretended to read. Sometimes he asked her questions, where she grew up, what she studied in college, why she dropped out. Emma answered because lying felt pointless, because silence made the room feel smaller, because somewhere beneath the fear, she was desperately, pathetically lonely. And Roman, for all his cruelty and control, seemed almost lonely too. On the 23rd night, everything changed. Emma woke to voices in the hallway. Not the quiet murmur of guards changing shifts, actual conversation, tense, urgent. She pressed her ear against the door. Don't care what Dimitri thinks. The shipment moves tonight or not at all. Roman's voice, clipped, dangerous. He's threatening to pull out of the deal entirely if we don't, then let him pull out. I don't negotiate with men who waste my time. Footsteps retreated down the hallway. Emma stepped back from the door, heart pounding. She'd heard fragments before, phone calls conducted in Italian or Russian, orders given to men whose names she didn't know. But this felt different. This felt like the violence was moving closer. She climbed back into bed and stared at the ceiling, counting her breaths until exhaustion dragged her under. When she woke again, pale morning light filtered through the windows, and Roman was sitting in the chair, watching her sleep. Emma bolted upright, clutching the blanket against her chest. What are you doing? You talk in your sleep. Heat flooded her face. That's creepy. You said my name. The heat turned into something else, something that made her stomach twist. I did not. Roman leaned forward, elbows resting on his knees, gaze steady and unreadable. You did. Twice. Emma's mouth went dry. She couldn't tell if he was mocking her or stating a fact. His expression gave away nothing. I was probably having a nightmare, she muttered. Probably. Roman stood and crossed to the window, hands sliding into his pockets. I'm leaving for a few days. Business in the city. Why are you telling me? Because if something happens while I'm gone, I need you to stay in this room. Don't open the door for anyone except Vincent. Who's Vincent? My head of security, tall, scar across his jaw. He's the only one I trust completely. Emma's pulse kicked up. Why would something happen? Roman didn't turn around. Because my world is full of people who would love to find a weakness they can exploit. And I'm a weakness. Yes. The word hit like a slap. Roman finally turned to face her, his expression carved from stone. If my enemies find out I'm keeping a witness alive, a civilian with no ties to my organization, they'll come for you, not to kill you, to use you. Use me how? However they think will hurt me most. Emma's breath caught. You don't even know me. Why would they think? Because I've kept you alive for 3 weeks when I should have buried you the same night. Roman's voice dropped, quiet, and edged with something Emma couldn't identify. That alone makes you valuable. He crossed the room and stopped at the door. Don't do anything stupid while I'm gone. Like what? I'm locked in a bedroom. Roman's mouth almost curved. Not quite a smile, something darker. Like trying to escape. The door closed behind him. Emma sat frozen on the bed, her mind racing. She was a weakness, a liability. Something Roman should have killed, but didn't. And somewhere beneath the fear and the anger and the exhaustion, a dangerous thought took root. If she was valuable, she had leverage. She just had to figure out how to use it. But Roman was gone for 4 days. On the 5th morning, Emma woke to the sound of breaking glass. She bolted upright, heart slamming against her ribs. Somewhere below, voices shouted. Not the controlled commands of Roman's men. Chaos. Emma scrambled out of bed and pressed herself against the wall beside the door. Her pulse roared in her ears. Another crash, gunfire, sharp and unmistakable. The attack Roman warned her about had come. Footsteps pounded down the hallway. Someone tried the door handle. It didn't budge. A voice barked orders in a language Emma didn't recognize. More gunfire. Closer now. Then silence. The kind of silence that felt worse than noise. Emma's hands shook. She scanned the room desperately, searching for anything she could use as a weapon. The chair, the lamp. Nothing that would stop a bullet. The door handle rattled again. "Emma?" Vincent's voice. Low. Urgent. Emma hesitated. Roman had said to trust Vincent, but Roman also kept her locked in a gilded cage, so his advice felt questionable at best. "Emma, open the door. Now." "I can't. It's locked from the outside." A pause. Then the sound of keys rattling. The lock disengaged. The door swung open. Vincent filled the doorway, tall, broad-shouldered, with a scar cutting across his jaw exactly like Roman described. He held a gun in one hand and gestured sharply with the other. "Come with me. We don't have much time." "What's happening?" "Rivals hit the house. Roman's on his way back, but we need to move you now." Emma didn't argue. She ran after Vincent down the hallway, barefoot, her heart hammering. Behind them, more gunfire erupted. Windows shattered somewhere on the first floor. Vincent led her through a series of narrow corridors Emma had never seen before, servant passages hidden behind elegant walls. They descended a tight staircase into darkness. At the bottom, Vincent pushed open a heavy door. Cold air and the smell of damp stone rushed over her. A wine cellar. Ancient and sprawling, lined with racks holding hundreds of bottles covered in dust. A single bulb burned overhead, casting long shadows across the concrete floor. Vincent pulled Emma inside and locked the door behind them. "Stay here. Don't make a sound. If anyone besides me or Roman opens that door, run for the far corner and hide behind the racks." "What if they find me?" Vincent's expression hardened. "They won't." He turned and disappeared back up the stairs. The lock engaged. Emma stood alone in the wine cellar, surrounded by bottles worth more than her life, listening to the muffled sounds of violence tearing apart the mansion above her head. She sank to the floor and wrapped her arms around her knees. Time stretched into something meaningless. Minutes, hours. She couldn't tell. Eventually the noise stopped. Silence pressed down like a weight. Emma stared at the locked door and waited. When the door finally opened, Roman stood on the other side. He was covered in blood. Not hurt. Emma could tell by the way he moved, fluid and controlled, but soaked in it. His black shirt clung to his chest. His hands were stained red up to his wrists. Flecks of it darkened his jaw. He looked like something pulled straight from a nightmare. Emma scrambled to her feet, her breath catching. Roman's gaze locked onto her with an intensity that made her knees weak. He crossed the cellar in 3 long strides and grabbed her shoulders, his blood-stained hands gripping hard enough to bruise. "Are you hurt?" Emma shook her head, unable to speak. Roman's eyes swept over her, checking for injuries with the same clinical precision he used for everything. When he seemed satisfied, he released her and stepped back. "Vincent got you out in time." "What happened?" "A rival family thought they could take advantage of my absence." Roman's voice was flat, empty. "They were wrong." Emma stared at the blood covering him. "How many? Doesn't matter." "It matters to me." Roman's jaw tightened. "Why?" "Because I need to know what kind of monster I'm trapped with." The words hung between them, sharp and unforgiving. Roman studied her for a long moment. Then he turned and walked toward the stairs. "Come on, your room is compromised. You're staying somewhere else tonight." Emma followed him up through the hidden passages, past shattered windows and overturned furniture. Bodies lay scattered across the first floor, men in dark suits, weapons still clutched in their hands. Emma forced herself not to look too closely. Roman led her to a different wing of the mansion, up another flight of stairs, and into a massive library she hadn't known existed. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves lined the walls. A stone fireplace crackled with fresh flames. Leather chairs sat arranged near the hearth, and a large desk dominated one corner. "You'll sleep here tonight," Roman said. "The doors lock. No one comes in here without my permission." Emma turned slowly, taking in the room. It felt lived in, personal, like Roman actually spent time here. "This is your space." "Yes." "Why are you letting me stay here?" Roman crossed to the fireplace and stared into the flames. He'd started to tremble. Barely visible, but there. The adrenaline wearing off, the exhaustion settling in. Because it's the safest room in the house, he said quietly. And because I'm too tired to argue. He pulled off his blood-stained shirt and tossed it onto the floor. Beneath it, his torso was a map of scars, old knife wounds, bullet grazes, the physical cost of a life built on violence. Emma's breath caught. Roman grabbed a clean shirt from a drawer near the desk and pulled it on. Dark gray. Soft cotton. He left it unbuttoned. There's a couch, he said, gesturing toward the corner. Use it. I'll stay in the chair. You don't have to. I'm not leaving you alone tonight. The certainty in his voice silenced any argument. Emma sank onto the leather couch, exhaustion crashing over her in waves. Roman settled into the chair by the fire, his gaze distant and haunted. Neither of them spoke. Outside, the city glowed beneath a sky turning gray with dawn. And somewhere in the silence, Emma realized the truth she'd been avoiding for 3 weeks. She wasn't afraid of Roman anymore. She was afraid of what it meant that she wasn't. Emma woke to the smell of leather and wood smoke. For a moment, she forgot where she was. Then reality crashed back. The attack. The blood. Roman's library. She sat up slowly, muscles aching from sleeping on the couch in an awkward position. Pale morning light filtered through tall windows. The fireplace had burned down to embers. The chair where Roman had been sitting stood empty. Emma pushed herself upright and crossed to the windows. Below, men in dark suits moved across the lawn, carrying debris, boarding up shattered windows, cleaning up the violence like it was routine maintenance. Maybe it was. You should eat something. Emma spun around. Roman stood in the doorway holding 2 white mugs. He'd showered, changed into fresh clothes, black pants, a charcoal shirt rolled to his elbows. His hair was still damp, pushed back from his face. He looked exhausted despite the clean appearance, dark circles carved beneath his eyes. He crossed the room and held out one of the mugs. Coffee. Black. I don't keep cream or sugar up here. Emma took it because refusing felt stupid. The ceramic was warm against her palms. She sipped carefully. Strong. Bitter. Exactly what she needed. Roman leaned against the desk, watching her over the rim of his own mug. The silence stretched between them, heavy with things neither knew how to say. How many died? Emma finally asked. 12. Your men or theirs? 8 of theirs, 4 of mine. Emma's stomach twisted. I'm sorry. Roman's expression didn't change. Don't be. They knew the risks when they took the job. That doesn't make it okay. No. Roman took a long drink of coffee. It doesn't. Emma set her mug on the windowsill and wrapped her arms around herself. Outside, the city stretched toward the horizon, glittering and oblivious. Somewhere down there, people were living normal lives, going to work, complaining about traffic, worrying about bills. She used to be one of them. I can't stay here, she said quietly. You don't have a choice. There's always a choice. Roman's jaw tightened. If you leave, you're dead within 48 hours. My enemies know you exist now. They know I've kept you alive. That makes you a target regardless of what you've seen or what you know. So I'm trapped forever. You're protected. Emma turned to face him, anger bubbling up beneath the exhaustion. Protected? I'm a prisoner. You lock me in rooms. Your men watch my every move. I don't have a phone. I don't have freedom. I don't even have shoes that fit properly. You're alive. That's not enough. The words hung between them like a challenge. Roman set his mug down and crossed the room slowly. He stopped close enough that Emma had to tilt her head back to meet his gaze. This close, she could see the fine lines around his eyes, the tension carved into his jaw, the exhaustion he wore like armor. Then what do you want? He asked quietly. I want my life back. You don't have a life to go back to. No family, no close friends, a studio apartment you couldn't afford, and a job that paid minimum wage. Roman's voice stayed soft, but each word cut like a blade. You were invisible before I took you. At least here, you matter. I matter because I'm useful, Emma shot back. Because keeping me alive somehow serves whatever game you're playing. The second I stop being useful, I'm dead. Yes. The honesty hit harder than a lie would have. Roman stepped back, running a hand through his damp hair. I'm trying to keep you safe in a world that doesn't value safety. That's the best I can offer. Then let me help. Roman's head snapped up. What? You said I'm a liability, a weakness. Fine. Let me be something else. Teach me how to survive in your world so I'm not helpless. So I'm not just something you have to protect. Absolutely not. Why? Because the moment you become part of this world, you lose whatever innocence is keeping you human. Roman's voice dropped, dangerous and final. I won't be responsible for that. Emma stepped closer, refusing to back down. You already are. They stared at each other, the air between them crackling with tension neither understood nor wanted to acknowledge. Finally, Roman broke eye contact. Get dressed. Breakfast is in 20 minutes. He walked out before Emma could argue. Breakfast arrived in the library instead of her old bedroom. A small table had been set near the fireplace with 2 place settings, simple white plates, silver utensils, cloth napkins folded precisely. Emma sat across from Roman while staff brought food in silence. Scrambled eggs, toast, fresh fruit, orange juice in crystal glasses. Everything looked perfect and tasted like ash in her mouth. Roman ate mechanically, his gaze distant. He'd brought paperwork to the table, thick folders filled with documents Emma couldn't read from where she sat. Numbers, legal language, the bureaucracy of running a criminal empire disguised as legitimate business. Do you always work during meals? Emma asked. Usually. That's sad. Roman glanced up, one eyebrow raised. Why? Because food is supposed to be shared, enjoyed, not just fuel you consume while multitasking. I don't have time for enjoyment. Maybe that's the problem. Roman set his fork down slowly, giving her his full attention for the first time since they sat down. You think you understand my life? No. But I understand loneliness. Emma met his gaze steadily. And you're drowning in it. Something flickered across Roman's face, surprise maybe, or recognition. He looked away first, jaw tight. Finish eating. I have meetings all afternoon. What am I supposed to do? Stay in the library, read, rest. Vincent will be outside if you need anything. I'm still a prisoner then. You're still alive. The same answer. Always the same answer. Roman stood and gathered his folders. He paused at the door, looking back at her with an expression Emma couldn't decipher. The shirt you're wearing, he said quietly. It's mine. Emma glanced down. She was still wearing the dark gray shirt Roman had changed out of the night before, the one he'd worn after stripping off his blood-stained clothes. She'd put it on without thinking when she woke up cold on the couch, too exhausted to care about propriety. It hung loose on her frame, the sleeves rolled up, the hem falling to mid-thigh. I'll give it back, she said quickly. Don't. The word landed between them like a stone dropping into still water. Roman's gaze lingered on her for a moment longer. Then he turned and walked out. Emma sat alone at the breakfast table, her pulse racing, Roman's shirt soft and warm against her skin. The days that followed settled into a new routine. Emma spent mornings in the library, surrounded by books she actually wanted to read. Philosophy. History. Fiction that didn't talk down to her. She curled up in one of the leather chairs near the fireplace and lost herself in other people's stories while her own life remained suspended in uncertainty. Roman came and went. Sometimes he worked at the desk while she read, both of them existing in the same space without speaking. Sometimes he disappeared for hours, returning with tension carved into his shoulders and exhaustion darkening his eyes. Emma started wearing his shirt constantly. She told herself it was practical. Her own clothes had been ruined the night of the attack, and the new wardrobe Roman provided felt too impersonal. His shirt was soft, comfortable. It smelled like cedar and smoke, like the fireplace in the library, like safety in a place where safety shouldn't exist. But somewhere beneath the practical excuses, Emma knew the truth. Wearing his shirt felt like claiming something, and Roman noticed. Every time he saw her in it, something dangerous flickered across his expression. Not anger, not quite hunger. Something darker and more complicated. Possession mixed with restraint. Control barely holding together against instinct. One evening, Emma sat curled in the chair reading while Roman worked at his desk. Rain tapped softly against the windows. The fire crackled. Everything felt almost peaceful. You're still wearing it, Roman said without looking up from his paperwork. Emma glanced down at the dark gray shirt. It's comfortable. It's mine. You said not to give it back. I also didn't say to claim it permanently. Emma closed her book and met his gaze. Does it bother you? Roman's pen stilled against the paper. He leaned back in his chair, studying her with an intensity that made her pulse kick up. Yes. Why? Because in my world, a woman wearing a man's clothes means something. His voice stayed quiet, but the words carried weight. It's a claim. A declaration. Maybe that's not what I mean by it. Isn't it? The question hung in the air between them, loaded and dangerous. Emma's mouth went dry. She should take the shirt off, should put distance between whatever this was becoming, should remember that Roman was a killer who kept her alive only because she was useful. Instead, she said, "What if it is?" Roman stood slowly. He crossed the room with the deliberate control of someone fighting against instinct. When he reached her chair, he braced one hand on the armrest and leaned down until his face was inches from hers. Don't play games you don't understand, Emma. I'm not playing anything. Then you're even more dangerous than I thought. His gaze dropped to her mouth, lingered there. Emma's breath caught. For a moment, she thought he might kiss her, thought he might finally close the distance they'd been dancing around for weeks. Instead, Roman pushed away and walked back to his desk. Go to bed. It's late. Emma didn't move. Why won't you touch me? Roman's shoulders went rigid. Because the moment I do, everything changes. Maybe I want things to change. You don't know what you want. Stop telling me what I know. Roman spun around, and for the first time Emma saw real emotion break through his control. Frustration, hunger, something raw and barely contained. You think this is romance? His voice was harsh now, stripped of gentleness. You think because I haven't hurt you, because I let you wear my clothes and sleep in my library, that I'm something redeemable? I'm not. I kill people for money. I destroy lives. I run an empire built on blood and fear. I know what you are. Then why are you still here? Emma stood, closing the distance between them. Because I don't have anywhere else to go. Because you're the only person in this mansion who sees me as more than an object to guard. Because despite everything you've done, you haven't once treated me like I'm worthless. You should hate me. I know. Roman's jaw clenched. Emma, I'm not asking you to be good, she interrupted. I'm asking you to be honest. Do you want me here or not? The silence stretched so long, Emma thought he wouldn't answer. Finally, Roman exhaled slowly. I want you here more than I've wanted anything in 10 years, and that terrifies me. The confession landed between them like a grenade. Emma reached out slowly and touched his arm, just a light pressure, a question without words. Roman closed his eyes. Don't. Why? Because if I touch you, I won't stop. Emma's pulse roared in her ears. She should step back, should let this moment dissolve into the safety of distance. Instead, she whispered, Then don't stop. Roman's eyes snapped open. For one suspended moment, they stared at each other while the world held its breath. Then Roman grabbed her face with both hands and kissed her. Not gentle, not careful, desperate and hungry, and months of restraint shattering all at once. Emma gasped against his mouth and he swallowed the sound, deepening the kiss with bruising intensity. Her hands found his chest, fingers curling into his shirt. He backed her against the bookshelf, books tumbling to the floor around them, forgotten. His body pressed against hers, solid and overwhelming, and Emma couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't do anything except feel. Roman broke the kiss and pressed his forehead against hers, both of them gasping. This is a mistake, he whispered. I don't care. You should. Stop telling me what I should do. Roman's hand slid into her hair, tilting her head back. His thumb traced along her jaw, reverent despite the hunger burning in his eyes. If we do this, everything changes. You become mine, not my prisoner, not my responsibility, mine. And if I want that, then you're insane. Emma smiled against his mouth. Probably. Roman kissed her again, slower this time, but no less intense. When he finally pulled away, his breathing was ragged, control hanging by a thread. Go to bed, he said roughly. Now, before I change my mind about being careful. Emma's legs felt weak. She nodded and crossed to the door on shaking legs. At the threshold, she looked back. Roman stood beside the bookshelf, hands braced against the wood, shoulders heaving. He looked like a man at war with himself. Roman? He didn't turn around. I don't regret it. You will. Emma slipped out and closed the door behind her. Bang. The next morning, Roman was gone. Vincent informed her during breakfast that Roman had left for the city before dawn. Business that couldn't wait. He'd be back in 3 days. Emma told herself she wasn't disappointed. She spent the day in the library trying to focus on reading, but mostly replaying the kiss over and over in her mind. The way Roman's hands felt in her hair, the desperation in his touch, the rawness in his voice when he called her insane. She was still wearing his shirt. On the second day, Emma explored parts of the mansion she hadn't seen before. The staff no longer watched her with suspicion. They'd grown used to her presence, nodding politely when she passed. Vincent followed at a discreet distance, ever-present but unobtrusive. She found a music room with a grand piano collecting dust, an art studio with canvases stacked against the walls, all of them blank, a greenhouse filled with plants that someone had carefully maintained despite Roman's absence. The mansion was beautiful and empty and sad, like Roman himself. On the third day, Emma woke to raised voices somewhere below. She pulled on pants and padded barefoot into the hallway. Vincent stood at the top of the stairs, his expression tense. What's happening? Stay in your room, Emma. Vincent, now! The sharp command left no room for argument. Emma backed into the library and closed the door. She pressed her ear against the wood, straining to hear. Men's voices, too far away to make out words. Then footsteps on the stairs. Heavy. Multiple people. The door burst open. Roman strode in, fury etched into every line of his body. Behind him, 3 men Emma didn't recognize filed into the room. Older, dressed in expensive suits, radiating the kind of authority that came from years of violence. Vincent followed last, his hand resting on his holstered gun. Roman barely glanced at Emma before turning to face the 3 men. You have 60 seconds to tell me why you thought entering my private wing was acceptable. The tallest of the 3, silver-haired, cold-eyed, smiled without warmth. We wanted to meet the woman you've been hiding. Emma's blood went cold. Roman's voice dropped to something lethal. Get out. She's very pretty, Roman. I can see why you've kept her around. The man's gaze swept over Emma, assessing and dismissive. Though I have to wonder what the other families will think when they learn you've gone soft over a waitress. Luca. Roman took a single step forward. Leave. Now. Luca's smile widened. Or what? You'll kill me? Here? In front of her? He gestured toward Emma. I thought you were trying to protect her innocence. Nothing says innocent like watching her captor murder his business partners in cold blood. Emma's pulse hammered. She could feel the violence building in the room like static before lightning. Roman's hands flexed at his sides. She's not part of this. She's been part of this since the moment you decided keeping her alive was worth more than following protocol. Luca took a step closer to Emma, and Roman moved instinctively between them. You broke our most fundamental rule, Roman. Witnesses die. Always. No exceptions. I make the rules. Not anymore. Luca's expression hardened. The families are meeting next week. They're voting on whether you're still fit to lead the organization, and your little pet here is Exhibit A in the case against you. Roman went utterly still. You're threatening a coup. I'm informing you of reality. You've become compromised, sentimental, weak. Careful. Or what? Luca's voice turned mocking. You'll prove me wrong by killing her right now? Go ahead. Show me I'm mistaken about your weakness. The room held its breath. Emma couldn't move, couldn't speak. She watched Roman's shoulders rise and fall with controlled breathing, watched the muscle tick in his jaw, watched him stand between her and men who wanted her dead. Finally, Roman spoke. Get out of my house. If you come near her again, I'll bury you so deep your own family won't find the pieces. Luca studied him for a long moment. Then he shrugged. See you at the meeting, Roman. I hope she's worth losing everything. He turned and walked out, his companions following. Vincent closed the door behind them. Silence crashed down like a wave. Roman stood frozen, hands clenched into fists, breathing hard. Roman, don't. Emma took a step toward him. What just happened? What happened is my own people just threatened to remove me from power because I've been keeping you alive. Roman finally turned to face her, and his expression was devastating. Fury and fear, and something that looked almost like grief. What happened is I might have just destroyed everything I've built for 20 years because I couldn't put a bullet in your head when I should have. That's not my fault. I know, Roman's voice cracked. That's what makes this so much worse. He crossed to the window and pressed his palms against the glass, staring out at the city below. Emma's throat tightened. What are you going to do? I don't know. You could... What, Emma? Let you go? They'll hunt you down within hours. Kill you? Then everything I've risked means nothing. Keep hiding you? They'll use you against me until I have no choice but to comply or watch you suffer. Then fight them. Roman laughed, bitter and broken. You think I haven't been fighting my entire life? Emma crossed the room and grabbed his arm, forcing him to look at her. Then fight harder. You're Roman Vescari. You built this empire from nothing. Don't let them take it because they're scared of you having something human in your life. You are not a thing to have. I know. Emma stepped closer. But I'm choosing to be here. I'm choosing you. Even though it's insane, even though it makes no sense, I'm choosing this. Roman stared at her like she'd just spoken a language he didn't understand. Then he pulled her against his chest, one hand sliding into her hair, holding her so tightly it almost hurt. You're going to get yourself killed, he whispered against her temple. Maybe, but at least I'll die mattering to someone. Roman's arms tightened around her. Outside, the city glowed beneath gathering storm clouds. And somewhere in the marble halls below, men plotted to destroy the only thing Emma had left. Vote. The next 3 days passed in tense preparation. Roman disappeared into meetings with Vincent and other trusted men, strategizing for the vote that would determine whether he kept control of his empire. Emma caught fragments of conversation, names she didn't recognize, threats, counter-threats, the brutal chess game of criminal politics. She stayed in the library, trying not to feel useless. On the fourth night, Roman came to bed, not to his own room, to the couch where Emma had been sleeping since the attack. He sank into the leather chair beside it without a word, head tipped back, eyes closed. Emma sat up, pulling his shirt tighter around herself. You look exhausted. I am. When's the last time you slept? Don't remember. Emma shifted over on the couch. Come here. Roman opened his eyes and looked at her like she'd lost her mind. Emma, just sleep. Nothing else. You need rest, and you're not going to get it sitting in that chair. I don't... Please. The single word seemed to break through his resistance. Roman stood slowly and crossed to the couch. He lay down carefully, his back against the cushions, leaving space between them. Emma shifted closer and rested her head on his chest. His heartbeat was strong and steady beneath her ear. Roman's arm came around her shoulders, tentative at first, then tighter, like he was afraid she might disappear if he didn't hold on. This doesn't change anything, he said quietly. I know. You're still in danger. I'm still facing a coup. Nothing about this is resolved. I know. Roman's hand found her hair, fingers threading through it gently. Why aren't you terrified? Who says I'm not? You don't act like it. Emma tilted her head back to look at him. In the firelight, Roman's face looked younger, vulnerable in ways he never allowed during daylight. I am terrified, she admitted. Every day. But being terrified doesn't change anything, so I might as well choose to stay. That's the most insane logic I've ever heard. Welcome to my life. Roman almost smiled. Almost. Then he closed his eyes and pulled her closer. They fell asleep tangled together on the couch, while rain drummed against the windows, and somewhere below, the future hung in the balance. Emma woke to an empty couch and the smell of gunpowder. She bolted upright, heart racing. The library door stood open. Voices echoed from somewhere deep in the mansion, shouting, commands barked with military precision. Not an attack, preparation for one. Emma scrambled off the couch and ran into the hallway. Guards moved through the corridors with weapons drawn, taking positions near windows and doors. Vincent appeared at the top of the stairs, his expression grim. Where's Roman? Downstairs. Get back in the library and lock the door. What's happening? The families moved the vote up. They're coming here. Today. Emma's stomach dropped. Why? Because they want to force Roman into making a choice in front of everyone. Vincent's gaze was hard. You or the Empire. He can't have both. That's not a choice. That's the point. Vincent grabbed her arm. Get in the library. Don't come out no matter what you hear. He pushed her back through the door and closed it firmly. The lock engaged. Emma pressed her hands against the wood, pulse roaring in her ears. Downstairs, she heard cars pulling up the driveway, doors slamming, voices rising in greeting and challenge. The families had arrived. Emma paced the library, her mind racing. Roman was down there right now, facing men who wanted him to choose between power and the one thing that made him human. Men who saw her as a weakness to exploit. She had to do something. But what? She had no weapons, no training, no power except the fact that Roman cared enough about her to risk everything. And suddenly, Emma understood. She wasn't his weakness. She was his leverage. Emma crossed to the desk and yanked open drawers, searching. In the bottom left, she found what she needed. A letter opener, sharp and solid. Not much of a weapon, but it would have to be enough. She shoved it into the waistband of her pants, covered by Roman's shirt, and moved to the door. It was locked from the outside, but Emma had watched Vincent fumble with keys enough times to know the mechanism was old. She pulled a hairpin from her tangled hair and knelt beside the lock. It took 4 minutes that felt like hours. The lock clicked open. Emma eased the door open and slipped into the hallway. Guards were posted at the main staircase, but the servant passages Roman had shown her weeks ago remained empty. She moved through them quickly, heart hammering, following the sound of voices rising from the first floor. The meeting was happening in Roman's office, a massive room she'd only glimpsed once. Emma pressed herself against the wall outside and listened. Can't continue like this, Roman, Luca's voice sharp and authoritative. You've jeopardized all of us by keeping a civilian witness alive. The decision is simple. Kill her and retain your position, or step down and let someone with actual discipline take control. I'm not stepping down. Roman's voice was cold, controlled. But Emma could hear the fury beneath it. Then prove you're still capable of making hard decisions, another voice said. Male, older. Bring her down here. End it. Show us you're not compromised. Silence. Emma's breath caught. Then Roman spoke, each word deliberate and final. No. Then you leave us no choice. If you want her dead, you'll have to go through me. Roman's voice dropped to something lethal. Every single one of you, and I promise you won't survive the attempt. You're willing to start a war over a waitress? I'm willing to start a war over anyone who thinks they can dictate what I do in my own house. Emma's throat tightened. She pushed away from the wall and walked to the office door. Vincent saw her first. His eyes went wide. Emma, no! She ignored him and shoved the door open. Every head turned. The office was filled with men in expensive suits, 7 of them, all radiating the kind of dangerous authority that came from decades of violence. Roman stood behind his desk, hands braced on the mahogany surface, fury carved into every line of his body. His gaze locked onto Emma with an expression close to panic. Emma, get out! No. Emma stepped fully into the room and closed the door behind her. Her hands trembled, but she kept her voice steady. If you're going to decide my fate, I deserve to be here. Luca's mouth curved into a cold smile. How noble. Tell me, girl, do you understand what you've cost him? I understand that keeping me alive makes him human, Emma said. And you're terrified of that. We're terrified of weakness. There's a difference between weakness and humanity. Not in our world. Emma took a step closer. Then maybe your world needs to change. Several of the men laughed, cruel, dismissive sounds that made Emma's skin crawl. Roman moved around the desk, positioning himself between Emma and the others. This meeting is over. Get out of my house. Not until we have a resolution, Luca said calmly. The vote still stands. Either you end this liability, or we remove you from leadership. Then I guess you're removing me. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Emma's pulse roared. She grabbed Roman's arm. Wait! Don't! Roman's gaze stayed fixed on Luca. I've made my decision. Roman, you can't. I can, and I am. He finally looked at her, and his expression was devastating, fierce and final, and filled with something Emma couldn't name. I'm not killing you to keep power. I don't want any more. You built this empire, and I'll burn it down before I let them force me into becoming a monster again. The room erupted into chaos. Men shouting, chairs scraping, Vincent moving to Roman's side with his hand on his weapon. Luca's voice cut through it all. Then you've chosen. Effective immediately, Roman Vescari is removed from leadership. His territory, his assets, his alliances, all of it will be redistributed among the remaining families. Roman's jaw clenched. You'll have to take it by force. We will. The threat landed like a blade. Emma's mind raced. This was her fault. All of it. Roman was losing everything because he refused to kill her. Because somewhere along the way she'd become more important than power. And suddenly, Emma realized what she had to do. She pulled the letter opener from her waistband and pressed it against her own throat. Every weapon in the room immediately swung toward her. Emma, don't! Roman's voice was raw. Everyone stops, Emma said, surprised by how steady her voice sounded despite the cold metal against her skin. Right now, or I finish what you wanted Roman to do. You're bluffing, Luca said. Try me. Roman took a slow step toward her. Emma, put it down. No. Emma's gaze stayed locked on Luca. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to leave. All of you. You're going to pretend this meeting never happened, and you're going to let Roman keep his empire. And why would we do that? Because if I die, Roman has nothing left to lose. Emma's grip tightened on the letter opener. And a man with nothing to lose is the most dangerous thing in the world. He'll come after every single one of you, your families, your businesses, your children. He'll burn it all to ash and won't stop until everyone you love is buried beside me. Silence crashed down. Roman stared at her with horror and something else, understanding maybe, or recognition of just how far she was willing to go. You're insane, Luca said slowly. Probably. Emma smiled without warmth. But I'm also right, so you have a choice. Walk away and let this go, or watch everything collapse because you couldn't let one man keep one woman alive. The men exchanged glances, calculations happening behind cold eyes. Finally, Luca stood. This isn't over. Yes, Roman said quietly. It is. Luca studied them both for a long moment. Then he turned and walked out. The others followed. Vincent closed the door behind them. The letter opener clattered to the floor as Emma's hands started shaking uncontrollably. Roman crossed the room in 2 strides and grabbed her shoulders. What the hell were you thinking? I was thinking I wasn't going to let you lose everything because of me. You held a weapon to your own throat. You were willing to burn your empire for me. Emma looked up at him, tears streaming down her face. I was just returning the favor. Roman pulled her against his chest so tightly she couldn't breathe. His whole body trembled. Don't ever do that again. I can't promise that. Emma, I can't watch you destroy yourself to protect me. Roman's hand slid into her hair, tilting her face up. His eyes were dark and wild and filled with something that looked like fear. You're mine, he said roughly. Mine, and I protect what's mine, even from yourself. Then let me protect you too. Roman kissed her, hard, desperate, like he was trying to prove they were both still alive. Emma kissed him back with everything she had, all the fear and relief and insane devotion that had built between them over months of captivity turned into something neither expected. When they finally broke apart, both gasping, Roman pressed his forehead against hers. This isn't over, he whispered. They'll come back. They'll try again. I know. You should run, while you still can. Emma smiled through her tears. I'm not going anywhere. You're insane. You keep saying that. Because it keeps being true. Emma pulled his face down and kissed him again, softer this time. Then I guess we're both insane. Roman's arms tightened around her. Outside, storm clouds gathered over the city, and somewhere in the darkness, Emma knew the real war was just beginning. The first bullet came through the library window at 3 a.m. Emma woke to the sound of shattering glass and Roman's body covering hers before her brain fully registered the danger. His weight pressed her into the couch, one hand cradling her head, the other reaching for the gun he kept under the cushions. Stay down, he breathed against her ear. Another shot, then another. Methodical. Precise. Not random gunfire, but calculated destruction. Roman rolled off her and moved to the window in a crouch, gun raised. Emma's heart slammed against her ribs. Through the broken glass, she could see muzzle flashes in the darkness beyond the estate walls. "Vincent!" Roman's voice cut through the chaos. The door burst open. Vincent entered low and fast, weapon drawn. East and west perimeters breached, at least 20 hostiles. They're not trying to get in, they're keeping us pinned. How long until backup arrives? 30 minutes, maybe more. Roman swore viciously. He turned to Emma, his expression carved from stone and fury. Basement. Now. Roman. Now, Emma. Vincent grabbed her arm and hauled her toward the door. Emma stumbled after him, barefoot, still wearing Roman's shirt over thin sleep pants. Behind them, more gunfire erupted, closer this time, inside the house. They descended through the servant passages, Vincent moving with military precision. Emma's breath came in ragged gasps. Her mind couldn't catch up to what was happening. This wasn't like the last attack, chaotic and desperate. This was organized, professional. This was an execution. Vincent shoved her into the wine cellar and locked the door from the inside. The single bulb overhead cast long shadows across the concrete floor. Emma pressed her back against the wall, shaking. What's happening? They're finishing what they started in the meeting. Vincent checked his weapon with practiced efficiency. Luca's making his move. Roman said he'd burn everything. He will, but first he has to survive the night. Emma's throat tightened. He's going to get himself killed protecting me. Vincent's gaze was hard. Yes. The single word hit like a physical blow. Then let me go, Emma said desperately. Let me walk out there. If I'm gone, they'll stop. They'll kill you the second you show your face. And then they'll kill Roman anyway, because he's already proven he won't fall in line. Vincent moved to the door, listening. The only way through this is forward. Footsteps echoed above them, shouting, the unmistakable sound of hand-to-hand combat. Emma sank to the floor and wrapped her arms around her knees. Time dissolved into something meaningless. Minutes, hours. She couldn't tell. The sounds of violence ebbed and flowed like a tide, sometimes distant, sometimes terrifyingly close. Then silence. The kind of silence that felt like the world holding its breath. Vincent tensed, gun raised toward the door. The lock rattled. Emma's pulse roared in her ears. The door swung open. Roman stood on the other side, covered in blood and breathing hard. His shirt was torn. His knuckles were split and bleeding. But he was alive. Emma scrambled to her feet and threw herself at him. Roman caught her, one arm wrapping around her waist, holding her against his chest while his other hand still gripped his gun. "You're okay," Emma breathed against his neck. "For now." Roman's voice was rough. He pulled back and looked at Vincent. 7 dead, another dozen wounded. They pulled back 20 minutes ago. Why? Because they made their point. Roman's jaw clenched. This was a warning. Next time they'll finish it. Vincent holstered his weapon. "We need to move her. Tonight, before they regroup." "Move me where?" Emma looked between them. Roman's expression was unreadable. "Somewhere they can't find you." "No." Emma pulled away from him. "I'm not running." "You don't have a choice." "I made my choice when I held that blade to my throat." Emma's voice shook with fury. "I'm not leaving you to face this alone. You're not trained for this? Then train me." Roman stared at her like she'd lost her mind. "Absolutely not." "Why? Because you want to keep me innocent? That ship sailed the moment you dragged me into your world." Emma stepped closer, refusing to back down. "I'm already in this. I'm already a target. The only difference is whether I'm helpless or whether I learn how to fight back." "No." "Roman, I said no." His voice turned cold, final. "You're leaving. Vincent will take you to a safe house upstate. New identity, new life. You'll disappear and they'll never find you." Emma's chest tightened. "And what about you?" "I'll handle the families." "By yourself. I've been doing this for 20 years, and now they're coming after you because of me." Emma's throat burned. "You think I can just walk away knowing you might die because you wouldn't kill me when you should have?" Roman's mask cracked, just for a moment. "Better you alive somewhere else than dead because you stayed. That's not your decision to make." Yes, Roman said quietly. It is. He turned to Vincent. Get her ready. You leave in an hour. Vincent nodded and gestured for Emma to follow. Emma didn't move. Roman, go, Emma. The dismissal in his voice cut deeper than any weapon. Emma turned and followed Vincent up the stairs, her vision blurring with tears she refused to let fall. Boom. Vincent brought her to a bedroom on the second floor. Not her old prison, not Roman's library. A guest room she'd never seen before. Clean, impersonal, temporary. Pack light, Vincent said. One bag, essentials only. He left her alone. Emma sank onto the edge of the bed and stared at the wall. Her mind spun in useless circles. Roman was sending her away, protecting her by making her disappear. It was logical, strategic, the smart choice. It felt like being ripped apart. She stood and crossed to the small closet. Someone had already packed clothes for her, practical things, jeans and shirts and a jacket. On the dresser sat a wallet with cash and a driver's license bearing a name she didn't recognize. Sarah Mitchell. 25 years old, brown hair, green eyes, born in Ohio, a complete fiction. Emma picked up the license and stared at the face that was hers but wasn't. This was who she would become. A ghost, a stranger, someone with no past and no ties to the man currently fighting a war because he refused to kill her. She couldn't do it. Emma shoved the license into her pocket and grabbed the bag. She moved quickly through the hallways, avoiding the main corridors where guards were posted. The servant passages were still empty, everyone focused on securing the perimeter after the attack. She made it to Roman's office without being seen. He stood behind his desk, studying maps spread across the mahogany surface. Strategy. Planning for the next assault. His shoulders were rigid with tension, his jaw tight. "You're supposed to be getting ready," he said, without looking up. "I'm not going." "Emma, I'm not going," she repeated, stepping fully into the room and closing the door. "And you can't make me." Roman's hands flattened on the desk. "This isn't a negotiation." "You're right. It's not." Emma crossed to stand directly across from him. "Because I've already decided. I'm staying. You can lock me up again. You can have Vincent drag me to the car. But the second I get the chance, I'll come back." "You're being irrational." "I'm being loyal." Emma leaned forward, meeting his gaze with steel in her own. "You stood in front of 7 men and told them you'd burn everything before you let them hurt me. I'm doing the same thing. So either accept it or waste time trying to force me out while your enemies plan their next move." Roman's control finally snapped. He moved around the desk with frightening speed and grabbed her shoulders, pulling her close. "You think this is romantic? You think staying makes you brave? It makes you a liability I can't afford. Then maybe you should have killed me when you had the chance." The words landed between them like a grenade. Roman's grip tightened. His eyes were wild, fury and fear and something raw bleeding through the cracks in his armor. "I can't lose you," he said roughly. "I can't watch you die because I was too selfish to let you go. And I can't watch you destroy yourself trying to protect me from a world I'm already part of." Emma reached up and touched his face, feeling the tension carved into his jaw. "We're in this together now, whether you like it or not." Roman closed his eyes. "You're going to get yourself killed, maybe, but I'd rather die fighting beside you than live safely somewhere else knowing I abandoned you." For a long moment, Roman said nothing. Then he opened his eyes and the decision was there, resignation mixed with something that looked almost like relief. "If you stay, you follow my orders. No questions, no arguments." "Agreed. And you learn how to protect yourself, starting tomorrow." Emma nodded. Roman pulled her against his chest, one hand sliding into her hair, holding her like she might disappear. "You're insane." "You keep saying that." "Because it keeps being true." Emma buried her face against his neck and breathed him in. Gunpowder and smoke and the cedar scent that clung to everything he owned. They stood like that for a long time, while the dawn crept toward the horizon, and somewhere beyond the estate walls, enemies sharpened their knives. Training started before sunrise. Vincent led Emma to a basement room she hadn't known existed. Concrete walls, padded floors, racks of weapons ranging from knives to assault rifles. A private armory hidden beneath the mansion's elegant exterior. "We're starting with basics," Vincent said, handing her a knife. How to hold it, how to strike, how to defend yourself if someone gets close. Emma took the weapon, feeling its weight. This feels wrong. It should. Taking a life isn't natural for most people. Vincent moved behind her and adjusted her grip. But sometimes survival requires doing things that feel wrong. They trained for 3 hours. Emma's muscles screamed, sweat soaked through her shirt. Vincent was relentless, pushing her past exhaustion, correcting every mistake, forcing her to repeat movements until they became muscle memory. Roman appeared near the end of the session. He leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, watching silently. His expression was unreadable. When Vincent finally called a break, Emma collapsed onto the padded floor, gasping for breath. Roman crossed the room and crouched beside her. You're favoring your right side. My left shoulder hurts. Push through it. In a real fight, no one cares if you're injured. Emma glared at him. You could try being encouraging. I could. But encouragement won't keep you alive. Roman stood and offered his hand. Again, this time with me. Emma let him pull her upright. Her legs felt like water. Roman took Vincent's place, moving with the fluid grace of someone who'd been fighting his entire life. Come at me. What? Attack me, however you want. Emma hesitated. I don't want to hurt you. Roman's mouth curved slightly. You won't. The dismissal in his tone sparked something competitive in Emma's chest. She moved forward and tried the strike Vincent had taught her, fast, aimed at Roman's ribs. He blocked it effortlessly, caught her wrist, and used her momentum to spin her around. Her back hit his chest. His arm locked across her throat, not tight enough to cut off air, but enough to immobilize her. Dead, Roman said quietly against her ear. Emma struggled. His grip didn't budge. Stop fighting with strength. You'll lose every time. Roman's breath was warm against her neck. Fight with speed, unpredictability. Use what your opponent expects against them. He released her. Emma spun around, breathing hard. Show me. For the next hour, Roman taught her things Vincent hadn't covered. Dirty tricks. How to use an attacker's weight against them. Where to strike to cause maximum damage with minimum effort. He moved her through scenarios. Someone grabbing her from behind, someone pinning her against a wall, someone with a weapon. Every time, he was faster, stronger, completely in control. But slowly, Emma started to see the patterns, started to anticipate his movements. The 10th time he came at her, she dropped low and drove her elbow into his stomach instead of trying to block. Roman grunted and stepped back, something like approval flickering across his face. Better. Emma was shaking with exhaustion and adrenaline. How long did it take you to learn all this? I started when I was 7. Roman grabbed 2 bottles of water from the corner and tossed one to her. My father believed weakness got you killed, so he beat the weakness out of me. The casual way he said it made Emma's chest tighten. That's abuse. That's survival. Roman drank deeply, his gaze distant. He was right. Everything he taught me kept me alive long enough to take over the empire he built. At what cost? Roman looked at her then, something dark and broken moving behind his eyes. Everything that matters. Before Emma could respond, Vincent appeared in the doorway. We have a problem. Roman's expression went cold. What kind of problem? The kind that just walked through our front gate. Look, Emma followed Roman and Vincent upstairs, her muscles screaming with every step. In the main foyer, 3 men stood surrounded by Roman's guards. Not Luca's people. Someone new. The man at the center was younger than Emma expected, maybe 40, with silver threading through dark hair and eyes that looked almost kind. He wore an expensive suit and smiled when he saw Roman. Roman, it's been too long. Roman's voice was ice. Dmitri, what are you doing in my house? Delivering a message. Dmitri's gaze slid to Emma, still wearing Roman's shirt over training clothes, covered in sweat. His smile widened. So this is the woman who's caused all the trouble. Emma felt Roman tense beside her. Say what you came to say, Roman said quietly. Then leave. The families have reached a consensus. Dmitri pulled an envelope from his jacket and held it out. You have 72 hours to comply, or they'll take your territory by force. Roman didn't take the envelope. Comply with what? Open it and see. Roman snatched the envelope and tore it open. Emma watched his expression shift as he read, from cold control to something that looked almost like shock. No. It's non-negotiable. Dimitri's voice stayed pleasant, reasonable. The families are willing to let you remain in power. All you have to do is marry Katerina Volkov and sever all ties with your current complication. Emma's blood went cold. Roman crumpled the paper in his fist. Get out! Katerina is a beautiful woman, intelligent, well-connected. A union between your family and the Volkovs would stabilize the entire organization. Dimitri glanced at Emma with something that looked almost pitying. Surely that's worth more than a waitress you picked up at a crime scene. Get out! The threat in Roman's voice was unmistakable. Dimitri raised his hands in mock surrender. 72 hours, Roman. Think carefully about your priorities. He turned and walked out, his companions following. The door closed. Silence crashed down like a tidal wave. Emma stared at Roman's back, her mind spinning. What just happened? Roman said nothing. His shoulders rose and fell with controlled breathing. Roman! They're trying to force my hand. His voice was flat. Dead. Marry into the Volkov family and solidify the alliance, or lose everything. And if you refuse, then they come after us with everything they have. Not just Luca's faction, all of them, united. Emma's throat closed. How long can you hold out against that? Maybe a week, maybe less. Roman finally turned to face her, and his expression was devastated. They've cornered me, Emma. Either I give you up and marry a woman I don't want, or I fight a war I can't win. Then we fight. There's no winning this. So what are you saying? Emma's voice cracked. That you're going to comply? That you're going to marry someone else and pretend I never existed? I'm saying I don't know how to keep you alive and keep my empire. Roman's control finally shattered. I'm saying I spent 20 years building this organization, and now I have to choose between everything I've worked for and the one person who makes me feel human. Emma took a step toward him. Then choose me. It's not that simple. Yes, it is. Emma grabbed his arm. You said you'd burn it all down before you let them hurt me. So do it. Choose me and let the rest collapse. Roman stared at her like she'd just asked him to cut out his own heart. You don't understand what you're asking. I understand perfectly. You're just too afraid to do it. The words hung between them, brutal and true. Roman turned away. Get out. Roman, get out, Emma. I need to think. Emma stood frozen, watching the man she'd chosen fall apart under the weight of an impossible decision. Finally, she turned and walked away, leaving him alone in the foyer surrounded by guards who couldn't protect him from the choice that was killing him. Emma spent the rest of the day in the library, staring at pages she couldn't read. Her mind kept circling back to Dimitri's words. 72 hours. Marry Katerina Volkov, sever all ties. The families had found the perfect trap, one that required Roman to destroy himself no matter which choice he made. Night fell. Emma heard footsteps in the hallway, but Roman never appeared. She fell asleep on the couch, still wearing his shirt, exhaustion finally pulling her under. When she woke, pale dawn light filtered through the windows, and Roman was standing at the desk, staring at something in his hands. Emma sat up slowly. What is it? Roman looked up. His eyes were hollow. The marriage contract, already drawn up. All I have to do is sign. Emma's heart stopped. Are you going to? Silence stretched between them, suffocating and terrible. Finally, Roman set the papers down. I don't know. The admission broke something in Emma's chest. If I refuse, they'll come after us both. Roman continued, his voice distant. You'll die. I'll die. Everything I've built will be carved up and distributed to men who will destroy it within a year. And if you comply? Then I marry Katerina, secure the alliance, keep my empire. Roman's jaw clenched. And you disappear into witness protection with a new name and a life that has nothing to do with me. That's not a choice. That's surrender. That's survival. Emma stood and crossed to him. I didn't threaten my own life so you could give up. The second things got complicated. This isn't complicated. This is impossible. Then make it possible. Emma grabbed his face, forcing him to look at her. You're Roman Vescari. You've survived things that would have killed anyone else. Don't tell me you're going to let a marriage contract destroy you. You think I want this? Roman's voice cracked. You think I want to choose between the empire I bled for and the woman I... He stopped, closed his eyes. Emma's breath caught. Say it. Emma, say it. Roman opened his eyes, and the rawness there nearly destroyed her. The woman I love. The confession hung in the air between them, heavy and irrevocable. Emma's vision blurred. Then choose me, please. If I choose you, you die. If you choose them, I die anyway. Just slower. Roman pulled her against his chest, holding her so tightly it hurt. His whole body trembled. I don't know how to save you. Then let me save myself. Emma pulled back and looked up at him. I have an idea. It's insane, probably won't work, but it's better than surrender. What is it? Emma took a deep breath. We give them what they want. You marry Katerina, secure the alliance, play along until they believe you've chosen the empire. Roman's expression hardened. Absolutely not. And while they think they've won, we dismantle them from the inside. Emma's words came faster now, the plan crystallizing as she spoke. You said it yourself. This alliance is fragile. The families hate each other almost as much as they hate weakness. We just need to find the cracks and break them open. That could take months, years. Then we take months, years, however long it takes. Emma gripped his arms. But we do it together. Not with me hidden away somewhere safe. Not with you married to someone else. Together. Roman stared at her like she'd lost her mind. You're asking me to marry another woman while we plot against the organization from the inside. Yes. That's insane. You keep saying that, because it keeps being... Roman stopped. Something shifted in his expression. That might actually work. Emma's pulse kicked up. You're considering it. If I marry Katerina, the families believe they've won. They'll relax. Stop watching so closely. Roman's mind was already working through strategies, scenarios. We could use that. And I can stay. Not as your prisoner. As your... what? Your mistress? Your secret? As mine. Roman's hand slid into her hair. Always mine. Just hidden until we can burn them all down. Emma's heart hammered. This is going to hurt. For both of us. I know. You'll have to touch her, be seen with her, pretend... I know, Emma. Roman's voice was rough. But if it keeps you alive long enough for us to find a way out, I'll do it. I'll do anything. Emma kissed him, hard and desperate, and filled with everything they couldn't say out loud. When they broke apart, Roman rested his forehead against hers. 72 hours, he whispered. That's all the time we have to make this work. Then we'd better get started. Emma pulled away and crossed to the desk. She picked up the marriage contract and stared at the signature line. Then she handed it to Roman. Sign it. Make them think they've won. Roman took the papers with shaking hands. And for the first time since Emma had known him, she saw fear in his eyes. Not fear of death, not fear of violence. Fear of losing the one thing that made him human. He signed his name across the bottom of the page. The ink dried like blood. And somewhere in the distance, Emma heard thunder rolling toward them like a promise of storms to come. The wedding happened on a Thursday. Emma watched from a monitor in the basement security room, Vincent standing silent beside her. On screen, Roman stood at the front of a ballroom filled with criminals wearing designer suits and false smiles. The same ballroom where Emma had served champagne months ago, before gunfire turned her life into something unrecognizable. Katerina Volkov walked down the aisle in white silk that probably cost more than Emma's entire former existence. She was beautiful in the way sharp things are beautiful, all edges and cold perfection. Dark hair pulled back severely, red lips curved in a smile that never reached her eyes. Roman's face was a mask, completely empty. He said his vows in a voice devoid of emotion, slipped a ring onto Katerina's finger with mechanical precision, and kissed her with all the passion of someone performing a business transaction. Because that's exactly what it was. Emma's chest felt hollow. She knew this was the plan. She'd suggested it, But knowing and watching were different things entirely. The ceremony ended. Applause echoed through the ballroom. Roman and Katerina turned to face the assembled families, united now through marriage, their alliance sealed in gold and lies. Luca raised a glass in the front row, his smile triumphant. The screen went dark. Emma sat in silence, her hands clenched so tightly her nails drew blood from her palms. "He's doing this for you," Vincent said quietly. "I know." "Then stop looking like he betrayed you." Emma turned on him, fury blazing through the numbness. "He just married someone else. How am I supposed to look?" "Like someone who understands strategy." Vincent's voice was hard. "Roman gave up everything today, except you. The least you can do is honor that sacrifice by not falling apart." The words hit like a slap. Emma forced herself to breathe, to think. Vincent was right. This was the plan. Roman was playing his part. Now she needed to play hers. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now you disappear." Vincent pulled a folder from the desk and handed it to her. "New identity, new location. You'll stay in one of Roman's safe houses 3 hours north, completely off the grid." "For how long?" "However long it takes to find the leverage we need." Vincent's expression was grim. "Roman will feed us information from inside the organization. You'll analyze it, find patterns, weaknesses. When the time is right, we strike." Emma opened the folder. Sarah Mitchell stared back at her from the driver's license. 25, brown hair, green eyes, a ghost. "What if they find me?" "They won't. Only 3 people know where you'll be, me, Roman, and you." Vincent checked his watch. "Car leaves in 10 minutes. Take only what you packed. Leave everything else behind." Emma stood slowly. Her legs felt unsteady. "Can I see him? Before I go?" "No. Roman's with Katerina now. The families are watching. Any contact puts you both at risk." The finality in Vincent's voice left no room for argument. Emma nodded and turned toward the door. At the threshold, she looked back. "Tell him I understand. Tell him I'm not afraid." Vincent's expression softened slightly. "He already knows." The safe house was a cabin buried in forest 3 hours from the city. No neighbors, no cell service. Just trees and silence and Emma's thoughts eating her alive. Vincent stayed the first night, securing the perimeter and showing her the security system. Panic buttons in every room, cameras covering every angle, a weapons locker in the basement that made the mansion's armory look modest. "Roman doesn't do anything halfway," Vincent said, loading ammunition into a handgun and handing it to her. "Including protection." Emma took the weapon. Her hands no longer shook when she held it. Training had stripped away the fear, replaced it with muscle memory and cold awareness. "How often will you check in?" "Every 72 hours. Longer if something goes wrong in the city." Vincent pulled out an encrypted phone and set it on the counter. "This is your only link to us. Don't use it unless it's an emergency. The families have resources we don't fully understand." "What kind of resources?" "The kind that can trace a phone call in minutes if they're motivated enough." Vincent's jaw tightened. "Roman's walking a knife's edge right now. One mistake and they'll know something's wrong." Emma's chest constricted. "Is he safe?" "As safe as anyone can be married to a Volkov." Vincent headed for the door. "Stay alert. Trust no one except me or Roman. If anyone else shows up here, shoot first and ask questions after." The door closed behind him. Emma stood alone in the cabin, listening to Vincent's car disappear down the gravel drive. Then silence crashed down like a weight. Days bled together. Emma woke before dawn and ran the perimeter of the property, pushing herself until exhaustion drowned out thought. She trained with the weapons Vincent left behind, disassembling and reassembling them until the movements became meditation. She analyzed the files Roman sent through Vincent, searching for patterns in financial transactions, territorial disputes, shipments that didn't add up. The families were hiding something. She could feel it beneath the surface, money moving in ways that didn't match legitimate business, meetings happening in locations that made no strategic sense. But she couldn't find the thread that would unravel it all. Nights were worse. Emma lay awake in the cabin's single bedroom, staring at the ceiling and wondering what Roman was doing. If Katerina touched him, if he pretended to love her in public, if the mask he wore was starting to become real. On the 8th day, Vincent arrived with new files and dark circles carved beneath his eyes. "You look terrible," Emma said. Things are deteriorating faster than we expected. Vincent dropped the files on the table and collapsed into a chair. The families are pushing Roman to consolidate territories. Katerina's whispering poison in his ear about expanding into markets we've avoided for years. What kind of markets? Human trafficking, high-end politicians, celebrities, people who can be leveraged for power. Vincent's expression was disgusted. Roman's refused so far, but they're pressuring him hard. If he keeps refusing, they'll start questioning his loyalty. Emma's stomach turned. He can't comply with that. He won't, which means we're running out of time. Vincent pulled out a laptop and opened it. I need you to look at something. The screen showed financial records, millions of dollars moving through shell corporations, dummy accounts, offshore holdings. Emma scanned the numbers, her mind working through connections. These companies don't exist, she said slowly. They're fronts. We know that. What we don't know is what they're fronting for. Emma studied the patterns. Money flowing in from dozens of sources, then consolidating into 3 main accounts before disappearing into the Cayman Islands. The timing was irregular. Large deposits every 2 weeks, smaller ones scattered randomly between. Then she saw it. It's not random. Emma pulled the laptop closer. Look at the dates. Every large deposit corresponds with a major political event. Election cycles, international summits, legislative votes. Vincent leaned forward. You're saying they're buying influence. I'm saying they're buying politicians. Emma's pulse kicked up. This isn't just organized crime. This is institutional corruption. If we can prove where this money's going, we can bring down the entire organization. Vincent's expression turned sharp. And anyone connected to it. Including Roman. The words hung between them. Vincent nodded slowly. Including Roman. Unless we're very careful about how we expose this. Emma's mind raced. They needed proof. Names. Connections that couldn't be denied. But gathering that kind of evidence meant getting closer to the source. Roman needs to push for expansion, Emma said. Play along with what Katerina wants. Get deeper inside their operations. That's dangerous. Everything's dangerous, but if he's the one proposing expansion, they'll give him access to information they've been keeping compartmentalized. Emma met Vincent's gaze. How's his position with Katerina? Vincent's jaw tightened. Complicated. What does that mean? It means she's not stupid. She knows this marriage was forced. She knows Roman doesn't want her. Vincent paused. But she wants him anyway. Emma's chest constricted. He wouldn't. He hasn't, but she's making it difficult. Vincent stood and crossed to the window. Last night at a family dinner, she cornered him in a hallway, tried to seduce him. When he refused, she threatened to tell her father the marriage isn't being consummated. Can she do that? She can do whatever she wants. She's a Volkov. Vincent turned back to Emma. Roman's playing a dangerous game. If he keeps rejecting her, she'll turn vindictive. If he gives in, he won't. Emma's voice was steel. You sound certain. I am. Vincent studied her for a long moment. You really love him. Yes. Even knowing what he is, especially knowing what he is. Emma closed the laptop. Tell Roman to give Katerina what she needs, not everything, just enough to keep her satisfied. Vincent's eyebrows rose. You're asking him to sleep with his wife. I'm asking him to survive. The words tasted like acid. We need him inside their organization. If that means he has to touch her, then that's what it takes. Emma, tell him. Emma's voice cracked. Tell him I understand. Tell him I'm giving permission. That's not your burden to carry. It is if it keeps him alive. Vincent looked at her with something like pity. Then he nodded and gathered the files. At the door, he paused. For what it's worth, I don't think he could do it, even with your permission. He will if he has to. Emma turned away. Roman always does what's necessary. The door closed. Emma sank into the chair and buried her face in her hands. Otik. Vincent returned 4 days later. Emma knew something was wrong the moment she saw his face. He looked hollow, exhausted in ways that went beyond physical fatigue. What happened? Vincent set down his bag and pulled out the encrypted phone. We have a problem. Big one. He pulled up a video and handed her the phone. The footage showed Roman in what looked like a private office. Katerina stood close to him, her hand on his chest, lips near his ear. Roman's expression was unreadable. Then Katerina kissed him. Roman didn't pull away. Emma's breath stopped. The kiss deepened. Katerina's hand slid into Roman's hair. His hands found her waist, not pushing her away, but holding her close. Vincent stopped the video. It gets worse. How could it possibly? Keep watching. The video continued. Roman and Katerina pulled apart. She smiled and said something Emma couldn't hear. Roman nodded and followed her out of frame. The timestamp showed the footage was from 2 nights ago. Emma's vision blurred. Where did this come from? Katerina's father, he had cameras installed in Roman's office without telling anyone. Vincent's voice was tight. He sent this to Luca and Dimitri this morning. Proof that the marriage is working, that Roman's committed. Is he? The words came out broken. I don't know. Vincent took the phone back. I haven't spoken to Roman since this footage surfaced. He's been unreachable. Emma stood abruptly. I need to see him. That's not possible. I need to see him, Vincent. Emma's voice was fierce. I need to know if he's still mine or if he's already gone. Vincent hesitated. Then he nodded slowly. There's a gala tomorrow night. All the families will be there. You could slip in as part of the catering staff. Stay invisible, watch. But Emma, what? If Roman's truly turned, if he's choosing the Empire over you, Vincent's expression was grim. You need to be ready to walk away. I'm not walking away. Even if he's in love with someone else? Emma met his gaze steadily. Especially then, because if he's drowning, I'm pulling him out whether he wants saving or not. The gala was held in the same hotel where Emma's old life ended months ago. She wore a catering uniform that didn't quite fit and kept her head down while serving champagne to criminals who didn't see her. Invisible again, just like before. Except this time, she was hunting. Emma moved through the ballroom, scanning faces. The families mingled with false civility, alliances built on blood and fear-wearing tuxedos and designer gowns. Luca held court near the bar. Dimitri laughed with someone Emma didn't recognize. Then she saw Roman. He stood near the windows with Katerina at his side. She looked radiant in emerald silk, her hand possessive on his arm. Roman wore black, his expression carefully neutral as he spoke with an older man Emma recognized from files. Senator Morrison, one of the politicians buried in the financial records. Roman looked tired, thinner, like something inside him was slowly dying. Katerina leaned close and whispered something in his ear. Roman's jaw tightened. His hand found the small of her back, an intimate gesture that sent knives through Emma's chest. Emma turned away before she did something stupid. She couldn't watch this. Couldn't watch the man she loved pretend to be happy with someone else. She headed for the service exit, needing air, needing space. A hand grabbed her arm. Emma spun around, instinct driving her hand toward the knife hidden in her uniform. Roman stared at her, his eyes wide with shock. Emma? She froze. Let go. He pulled her into a side hallway, away from the ballroom noise. His grip was iron, his breathing harsh. What are you doing here? His voice was low, urgent. Watching you play happy husband. Emma yanked her arm free. Apparently you're very good at it. Roman's expression cracked. Emma, I saw the footage, Roman, you and Katerina, in your office. He went utterly still. Vincent showed you. He thought I deserved to know. It wasn't... Roman stopped, closed his eyes. It wasn't what it looked like. Really? Because it looked like you kissing your wife. She kissed me. And you didn't stop her. Emma's voice shook. You held her. You went with her when she left. Because I had to. Roman grabbed her shoulders. Because 20 people were watching, and if I rejected her publicly, everything we've been working toward collapses. So you just gave in. I gave her what she needed to believe I'm committed. Roman's hand slid into her hair. But I didn't touch her. Not the way that matters. Not the way I touch you. How am I supposed to believe that? Because you know me. Roman's voice dropped to something raw. You know me, Emma. Better than anyone. You know I couldn't... Footsteps echoed in the hallway. Roman shoved Emma behind him just as Katerina rounded the corner. She stopped, her gaze moving between them. Her smile turned cold. "Well," Katerina said slowly, "this is interesting." Roman's body went rigid. "Katerina, don't." She took a step closer, studying Emma with the precision of a predator recognizing competition. "Let me guess, the mysterious witness you refused to kill, the liability you've been hiding." Emma straightened, refusing to cower. "I'm nobody." "You're somebody if my husband is sneaking into hallways to talk to you?" Katerina's eyes glittered. "Does my father know about this? Does Luca?" "They know I kept a witness alive," Roman said coldly. "That's not news." "But do they know she's here, in this hotel, close enough to touch?" Katerina pulled out her phone. "I should call security." Roman moved with terrifying speed. His hand closed around Katerina's wrist before she could dial, the phone clattering to the floor. "You're hurting me," Katerina said, her voice still calm. "I'll do worse if you threaten her." Roman's voice was lethal. Katerina's smile widened. "There it is. The truth you've been hiding behind political marriages and forced alliances. You love her." Roman said nothing. "How touching." Katerina wrenched her wrist free. "And how utterly stupid. You threw away everything for a woman who can't possibly survive in our world." "She's survived this long." "Because you've been protecting her. But you can't protect her from me." Katerina bent and picked up her phone. "I'm calling my father. He'll want to know his son-in-law has been playing him for a fool." Emma moved before thinking. She grabbed Katerina's arm, spun her around, and pressed the hidden knife against her throat, exactly the way Roman had taught her weeks ago in the basement training room. "Call him," Emma whispered against Katerina's ear, "and I'll make sure you don't finish the conversation." Katerina went very still. "You don't have the spine for murder." "Try me." For a long moment nobody moved, then Katerina laughed, soft and genuinely amused. "Well, maybe you're not as fragile as you look." "Emma, let her go." Roman's voice was tight. "Not until she puts the phone away." Katerina held up the phone where Emma could see it. Then she dropped it and crushed it beneath her designer heel. "There, problem solved." Emma slowly lowered the knife. Her hands were shaking. Katerina turned and looked at her with something almost like respect. "You love him too, enough to risk everything." "Yes." "Then you understand what I'm about to do is business, not personal." Katerina's expression hardened. "I'm giving you 72 hours. Disappear. Completely. If I see you again, if I even hear rumors you exist, I'll tell my father everything. He'll hunt you down, torture you until you break, and make Roman watch while he destroys the only thing that makes him human." "Katerina?" Roman started. 72 hours, husband." Katerina walked past them toward the ballroom. At the door, she looked back. "And Roman? Next time you kiss me, try to pretend you mean it. My patience has limits." She disappeared into the crowd. Emma's legs nearly gave out. Roman caught her, pulling her against his chest. "You need to leave," he said roughly. "Now, before someone else sees you." "Come with me." "I can't." "Roman, please." Emma grabbed his jacket. "We're out of time. The plan isn't working. They're going to kill me anyway." "Then I'll kill them first." Roman's eyes were wild, desperate. "I'll kill every single one of them before I let them touch you." "You can't fight the entire organization. Watch me." Emma pulled his face down and kissed him, hard and desperate and tasting like goodbye. When they broke apart, Roman's forehead pressed against hers. "I love you," he whispered. "Then live." Emma stepped back, long enough for us to find a way through this. She turned and ran before he could argue. Behind her, Emma heard Roman slam his fist into the wall hard enough to crack plaster. She burst through the service exit into rain-soaked night and kept running, away from the hotel, away from the life she'd almost reclaimed, toward whatever future was left when everything else burned away. Vincent's car appeared at the end of the alley. Emma threw herself into the passenger seat. "Drive!" Vincent floored it. They were 3 blocks away when Emma heard the first explosion. She twisted in her seat and watched flames bloom against the night sky, orange and terrible and consuming the hotel where she'd just left Roman behind. "No." Vincent grabbed her arm before she could open the door. "Emma, don't. He's in there. If you go back, you both die." Emma fought against his grip, screaming Roman's name into the night while the hotel burned and sirens wailed, and somewhere in the chaos, the only man she'd ever loved might already be ash. The hotel burned for 3 hours. Emma sat in Vincent's car parked 2 blocks away, unable to move, unable to breathe, watching smoke climb into the night sky like a funeral pyre. Fire trucks screamed past, ambulances, police cruisers with lights painting the darkness red and blue. Vincent kept his hand on her shoulder, the only thing anchoring her to reality. "We don't know if he was inside," Vincent said quietly. Roman survived worse. Emma couldn't speak. Her throat had closed around words that felt too big to escape. She stared at the flames and remembered Roman's hands in her hair, his mouth against hers, the way he whispered her name like a prayer. If he was dead, she had killed him. Her presence at the gala, her refusal to stay hidden, her stupid, reckless need to see him one more time, all of it had led to this. Vincent's phone rang. He answered without looking away from the flames. "Talk to me." Emma couldn't hear the voice on the other end, just Vincent's silence, the tightening of his jaw, the way his grip on her shoulder suddenly turned painful. "Understood. We're moving." He ended the call and started the engine. "What?" Emma's voice cracked. "What happened?" "That was one of Roman's men. He made it out." Vincent pulled into traffic, driving fast but controlled. The explosion wasn't an accident. Someone planted charges in the foundation. Time to go off during the gala. "Who?" "We don't know yet, but Roman's alive. Injured, but alive." Vincent's eyes met hers in the rearview mirror. "He's asking for you." Emma's chest unlocked. She could suddenly breathe again. "Where is he?" "Private hospital across the city. Off the books. Only our people know about it." The drive took 20 minutes that felt like hours. Vincent navigated through back streets, checking mirrors obsessively, making sure they weren't followed. Emma pressed her forehead against the window and counted her breaths to keep from falling apart. Roman was alive. Everything else could be dealt with later. The hospital was a converted warehouse in an industrial district, unmarked, anonymous, surrounded by chain-link fence and men with weapons who nodded at Vincent as they passed. Inside, fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, the smell of antiseptic mixed with old concrete. Vincent led her through a maze of corridors to a private room at the back. Roman sat on the edge of a bed, shirtless, while a doctor stitched a gash across his ribs. Blood and soot streaked his chest. Burns marked his left shoulder. His hair was singed, but he was breathing, moving, alive. His eyes found Emma the moment she entered. "Out," he said to the doctor. Not cruel, just final. The doctor secured the last stitch, packed his supplies, and left without argument. Vincent followed, closing the door behind them. Silence crashed down. Roman and Emma stared at each other across 3 feet of space that felt like miles. Then Emma crossed the room and threw her arms around him, careful of his injuries, not careful enough. Roman's hands found her waist, pulling her close despite the pain it must have caused, his face buried in her hair, his whole body shaking. "I thought you were dead," Emma whispered against his neck. "Almost was." Roman's voice was rough, raw. "Katerina warned me. 2 minutes before the explosion, told me to get out." Emma pulled back to look at him. Why would she? Because she didn't plant the bomb. Her father did. Roman's jaw clenched. To kill me, Luca, Dmitri, and anyone else who threatened his position. Katerina was supposed to be in the blast too. He was willing to sacrifice his own daughter to consolidate power. Where is she now? Dead. She stayed behind to get other people out. Roman's eyes were hollow. She saved at least 20 lives, including mine. Emma's throat tightened. Katerina had been cruel and calculating and dangerous, but in the end she'd chosen humanity over survival. How many died? 15 confirmed, another dozen injured. Roman stood slowly, wincing. The families are in chaos. Half of them think it was an outside attack. The other half are accusing each other of betrayal. And you? I'm done. Roman crossed to the window and stared out at the city glowing beyond the industrial district. I'm done pretending, done playing politics, done sacrificing everything that matters for an empire built on blood. Emma moved to stand beside him. What are you saying? I'm saying I want out. Roman turned to face her, and his expression was devastating, exhausted and determined, and free in ways Emma had never seen. I want to burn it all down and walk away, with you. If you'll still have me after everything I've put you through. Emma's vision blurred. You're giving up the Empire. I'm choosing you over the Empire. There's a difference. Roman's hands found her face, thumbs brushing away tears. I spent 20 years building something that almost destroyed the only real thing I've ever had. I'm not making that mistake again. They'll come after us. Let them try. Roman's voice turned hard. I have enough evidence to bury every major family in federal prison for the next century. Financial records, recordings, proof of corruption that reaches into Congress. They come after us. I release everything and watch their world collapse. That's mutually assured destruction. That's insurance. Roman leaned his forehead against hers. I'm tired, Emma. Tired of violence, tired of control, tired of being the monster everyone expects me to be. I just want to be human again. With you. Emma kissed him, soft and slow and tasting like smoke and hope and everything they'd fought for. When they broke apart, Roman was smiling, small and genuine and absolutely devastating. We'll have to disappear, Emma said. I know. They'll hunt us for years. I know. We might not survive. Roman's smile widened slightly. At least we'll be together when we don't. Emma laughed through her tears. That's the most romantic thing you've ever said. I'm working on it. The door opened. Vincent entered holding a tablet. His expression was grim. We have a problem. Roman's mask snapped back into place. What kind? The kind where Katerina's father survived the blast and just declared war on you specifically. Vincent held up the tablet. Security footage showed Viktor Volkov, bloodied but alive, standing in front of news cameras. He's blaming you for the bombing, saying you orchestrated it to take over the organization. Every family still standing just received orders to kill you on sight. Roman took the tablet and watched the footage without emotion. Then he handed it back. Good. Vincent's eyebrows rose. Good? Victor just gave me exactly what I needed, a reason to release everything. Roman pulled out his phone and typed quickly. I'm sending the evidence to 5 different federal agencies simultaneously. By morning, warrants will be issued for every major player in the organization. Including you, Vincent pointed out, including me, which is why we're leaving the country tonight. Roman looked at Emma. How do you feel about Argentina? I don't speak Spanish. You'll learn. Vincent cleared his throat. Before you two run off into the sunset, there's something you should know. The evidence you're about to release, it doesn't just implicate the families, it implicates me too. Roman went still. Vincent, I've been with you for 15 years. I've done things that will put me away for life. Vincent's expression was calm, accepting. When you send that evidence, make sure my name's included. I'll take my chances with the courts rather than live knowing I helped you escape while I stayed behind. That's not happening. Yes, it is. Vincent's voice was firm. You've spent your whole life protecting people, Roman. Let someone protect you for once. Emma needs you alive more than I do. The two men stared at each other. Years of loyalty and violence and brotherhood passing between them without words. Finally, Roman nodded. Thank you. Don't thank me. Just survive. Vincent turned to Emma. Take care of him. He's terrible at taking care of himself. Emma's throat was tight. I will. Vincent left without another word. Roman stood in silence for a long moment. Then he finished typing and hit send. The evidence uploaded in seconds. Years of corruption, murder, and institutional rot flooding into federal databases simultaneously. There was no taking it back now. Roman set the phone down and looked at Emma. We have about 2 hours before this place is surrounded. Vincent's arranged transport to a private airfield. From there, we fly to Buenos Aires under fake names, new identities, new life. What about money? I have accounts Victor doesn't know about. Enough to last us several lifetimes if we're careful. Roman pulled on a clean shirt, moving stiffly around his injuries. We won't have the mansion or the empire or any of the power, just each other and whatever we can build from scratch. Emma helped him button the shirt, her hands steady despite the chaos spinning around them. I never wanted the mansion or the empire. I know. That's why you're the only person I trust with this. Roman caught her hands and pressed them against his chest, over his heart. Whatever happens next, whether we make it to Argentina or get caught trying, I need you to know something. What? You saved me. Roman's voice cracked. Not from the explosion, not from the families, from myself, from becoming something so dark and twisted there was nothing human left. You saved me, Emma, and I will spend the rest of my life, however long that is, being worthy of that. Emma pulled him down and kissed him with everything she had. All the fear and hope and desperate love that had built between them over months of captivity and violence and impossible choices. When they broke apart, both gasping, Emma smiled through her tears. Then let's go be worthy together. The airfield sat 20 miles outside the city, hidden behind industrial parks and warehouses that all looked abandoned. Vincent's driver delivered them exactly 90 minutes after Roman sent the evidence, cutting it close but not catastrophic. A small private jet waited on the tarmac, engines already running. Roman grabbed Emma's hand and ran. Behind them, sirens wailed in the distance. Police, federal agents, the entire weight of the law descending on the organization Roman had just destroyed. They had minutes, maybe less. They reached the jet and climbed the stairs. The pilot nodded once, one of Roman's people, loyal to the end, and sealed the door. The plane taxied immediately. Emma collapsed into a leather seat, her heart slamming against her ribs. Roman sat beside her and pulled her against his chest, one arm around her shoulders, holding her like she might disappear. Through the window, Emma watched the city lights fall away beneath them. The place where her old life had ended, and this impossible new one had begun. Everything she'd been before the gala, the invisible waitress, the struggling student, the girl nobody noticed, was gone. She was someone different now, someone who had held a knife to a mafia wife's throat, someone who had analyzed financial crimes and found patterns in corruption, someone who had chosen love over safety and walked away from any chance at a normal life. The plane climbed higher, breaking through clouds into moonlight. Roman's grip tightened around her shoulders. "No going back now," he said quietly. "I don't want to go back." He looked at her, something soft and wondering in his expression. "You're not afraid." "I'm terrified, but I'd rather be terrified with you than safe without you." Roman kissed her temple. "Still the most insane logic I've ever heard." "Welcome to my life." "Welcome to our life." The correction made Emma smile. They flew through the night while the world they'd left behind tore itself apart. News reports would flood the morning headlines. Massive federal raids, hundreds of arrests, an entire criminal organization collapsing in spectacular fashion. Roman Vescari would be declared a fugitive, wanted for murder, racketeering, conspiracy. But the evidence he'd released would also show the truth. The corruption. The politicians and businessmen and law enforcement officials who had enabled the organization for decades. Roman would be vilified and vindicated simultaneously, a criminal who had destroyed his own empire rather than let it continue poisoning everything it touched. History would argue about whether he was a monster or something more complicated. Emma didn't care what history thought. She knew who he was. She'd seen him at his worst and his best. She'd watched him choose humanity when it cost him everything. She'd held him while he broke and rebuilt himself into something capable of love, despite a lifetime of violence. That was enough. Buenos Aires welcomed them with warm rain and humidity that felt nothing like the city they'd left behind. Their apartment was small, 2 rooms in a neighborhood called Palermo, surrounded by cafes and bookstores and people who had no idea who they were. No guards, no weapons. Just cheap furniture and windows that actually opened, and neighbors who said good morning without fear in their eyes. It was perfect. Emma found work teaching English at a language school 3 blocks away. Roman took longer to adjust. 20 years of running an empire didn't translate easily into normal employment, but eventually found consulting work helping small businesses with finance and logistics. Nothing illegal, nothing dangerous, just work that used his mind without destroying his soul. They learned Spanish together, stumbling through conversations with patient locals who laughed at their mistakes but helped them improve. They cooked meals in their tiny kitchen. They walked through parks without looking over their shoulders. They slept in a bed that wasn't surrounded by guards or security systems, or the constant threat of violence. Some nights, Emma woke to find Roman standing at the window, staring out at the city with an expression she couldn't read. The weight of everything he'd given up, everything he'd been. She would cross the room and slide her arms around his waist, pressing her forehead against his back. "Regrets?" she'd whisper. "Never." Roman would turn and pull her close. "But sometimes I wonder if I'm fooling myself, pretending I can be normal when violence is all I've ever known." "You're not pretending. You're learning. There's a difference." "How can you be sure?" "Because I watch you choose gentleness every single day. When the man at the market tries to overcharge us and you smile instead of threatening him. When that kid knocked over your coffee last week and you bought him a replacement instead of getting angry. When you hold me like I'm something precious instead of something you own." Emma looked up at him. "That's not pretending, Roman. That's becoming." Roman's eyes would soften. Then he'd kiss her and carry her back to bed and prove with his hands and mouth and the way he whispered her name that he was exactly where he wanted to be. The nightmares came less frequently as months turned into a year. News from their old life filtered through occasionally. Vincent had taken a plea deal and was serving 7 years in minimum security. Luca was dead, killed in prison by someone with a grudge. Dmitri had fled to Russia and hadn't been heard from since. The organization Roman had destroyed was now a dozen smaller factions fighting over scraps. Roman's name appeared in the news periodically, sightings that were never confirmed. Theories about where he'd gone. Some people thought he was dead. Others believed he was still pulling strings from some hidden location. Nobody looked for him in a small apartment in Buenos Aires, where a man with scarred hands taught business classes and came home every night to a woman who wore his shirts and laughed at his terrible Spanish. They were ghosts. And ghosts, Emma learned, could be happy. 2 years after they'd fled the country, Roman came home with a small velvet box. Emma was cooking dinner, something she'd gotten surprisingly good at, when he walked through the door and set the box on the counter beside the stove. She stared at it. "What's that?" "Open it." Emma wiped her hands and picked up the box. Inside sat a simple gold ring. No diamonds, no family crest, just a band that caught the kitchen light and glowed warm against black velvet. "I know we can't get married officially," Roman said quietly. "Our real names are attached to too many warrants. But I wanted you to have something, a promise that's just between us." Emma's vision blurred. "Roman, you don't have to wear it if you don't want to. I know marriage is complicated for us. I know what the last one cost." He took the ring from the box and held it carefully. "But I wanted you to know that in every way that matters, you're mine, and I'm yours, for whatever time we have left." Emma held out her left hand. Roman slid the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly. "How did you know my size?" "I measured while you were sleeping." "That's creepy." Roman smiled. "You love it." "I love you." The words still felt new every time Emma said them. Still carried weight, still meant everything. Roman pulled her against his chest, one hand in her hair, the other resting on the small of her back, the way he always held her, like she was the only solid thing in a world that kept trying to dissolve. "I love you too," he said against her temple. "More than I thought I was capable of loving anything." They stood like that in their tiny kitchen while dinner burned on the stove and Buenos Aires buzzed outside their window, and somewhere across the ocean, the life they'd left behind continued without them. That night, Emma wore the ring to bed. Roman kissed it reverently, then kissed every inch of her skin until she forgot her own name. Later, tangled together in sheets that smelled like them instead of expensive detergent, Emma traced the scars across Roman's chest, each one a story, each one a piece of the man he'd been before her. "Do you miss it?" she asked. "The power, the control." Roman was quiet for a long time. Then he caught her hand and pressed it over his heart. "I miss the certainty," he admitted, "knowing exactly who I was and what I was capable of. Now I wake up every morning and have to choose to be someone better. That's harder than anything I did before. But you keep choosing it, because you make it worth choosing." Roman's fingers threaded through hers. "The Empire gave me power. You gave me a reason to be human. That's worth more than anything I gave up." Emma shifted to look at him in the darkness. "What if they find us? What if all of this, the life we've built, what if it's just borrowed time? Then we'll have borrowed it together. Roman pulled her closer. And that's enough. That's more than I ever thought I'd get. Emma rested her head on his chest and listened to his heartbeat. Strong, steady, alive. Outside, rain began to fall, soft and clean, and nothing like the night they'd met in violence and fear and desperate choices. They'd survived. Against logic and odds and everything that should have destroyed them, they'd survived. The girl who'd been invisible had learned to fight. The man who'd been a monster had learned to love. And together, they'd built something that looked almost like redemption. It wasn't perfect. Some days were hard. Some nights the nightmares still came. Some moments Roman would go quiet and distant, lost in memories of a life he could never fully escape. But Emma would reach for him in those moments, would pull him back to the present with gentle hands and whispered promises, would remind him that the past didn't define him anymore. And slowly, carefully, Roman would return. That was enough. That was everything. In the morning, Emma woke first. Pale sunlight filtered through thin curtains. Roman slept beside her, his face peaceful in a way it never was when he was awake. The ring on her finger caught the light and glowed. She studied him in the quiet dawn, this complicated, dangerous, gentle man who had kidnapped her out of desperation and loved her into freedom. Roman's eyes opened slowly, found hers immediately. "Morning," he said, voice rough with sleep. "Morning." His hand found her waist beneath the sheets, pulled her closer. "Any regrets?" he asked. The question he always asked, the fear he still carried. Emma smiled and kissed him softly. "Never." Roman's answering smile was pure sunshine breaking through storm clouds. They had no empire, no power, no guarantees that tomorrow wouldn't bring federal agents or old enemies or violence bleeding back into their careful peace. But they had each other. And in the tiny apartment in Buenos Aires where two ghosts had learned to become human again, that was more than enough. That was everything. Years later, when people asked Emma how her life had changed so dramatically, how an invisible waitress had ended up in South America with a new name and a complicated past, she would smile and give them half-truths. She'd fallen in love with the wrong person at the right time. She'd learned that survival sometimes meant burning down everything you knew. She'd discovered that monsters could choose to be human if someone gave them a reason worth choosing. She'd found that love wasn't about perfection. It was about two broken people deciding that broken together was better than whole apart. And late at night, when Roman held her close and the world outside their window glowed with borrowed light, Emma would remember the girl she'd been before the gala, before the gunfire, before Roman Vescari had looked at her in a rain-soaked alley and made the choice that changed everything. That girl would be proud of who Emma had become, fierce, brave, unafraid to fight for what mattered. Roman had saved her by refusing to kill her, but Emma had saved them both by refusing to let him stay a monster. That was the truth beneath all the violence and chaos and impossible choices. That was the story nobody else would ever fully understand. And as Emma drifted towards sleep in Roman's arms, the ring warm on her finger, she finally understood what freedom meant. Not safety, not certainty. Not a life without fear or struggle or hard days. Freedom meant choosing who you loved and being chosen in return. Freedom meant walking away from everything false to build something true. Freedom meant being seen, fully, completely, without masks or pretense, and being loved anyway. Emma had been invisible once. Now she was unforgettable. And beside her, breathing steady and warm in the Buenos Aires dawn, Roman Vescari, former mafia heir, wanted criminal, and the most complicated man Emma would ever know, slept peacefully for the first time in 30 years, because he was finally, impossibly, beautifully free.